Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Christian Recorder Dialogue. As always, we invite you to share your district and your name in the chat, and we invite you to be engaged with us. This evening, we have a very special guest with us, Ms. Wanda P. Sims, PRP, Professional Registered Parliamentarian. She is the immediate past president, as of September the 10th, of the National Association of Parliamentarians. But to us in the AME Church, you've probably seen Ms. Sims bending the ear of the Women's Missionary Society president and the lay organization president as the parliamentarian, both for the Connectional lay organization and for the Women's Missionary Society. But we thought it not robbery to celebrate Ms. Sims as she completes her tenure at the country's largest Association of Parliamentarians. Welcome, Ms. Sims, to the Christian Recorder Dialogues.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be with you this evening.
Well, we're excited to have you because, one of the things AMEs love to talk about is parliamentary procedure. And I don't think people realize that we basically had the chief parliamentarian of the country, the head of the professional association, the HPIC, the head parliamentarian in charge as an AME. So I'm just excited to chat with you. So, Ms. Sims, first, I just want to start off with a question. Tell us about the AME Church and your faith, and just how you got into the AME Church. And tell us about a little bit about your faith.
Yeah. So, when I graduated from college in 1980, I moved to the Washington D.C. area. I moved to Gaithersburg, Maryland, and I went to work for the Federal Communications Commission. And every Sunday, I'd get up and drive into D.C. looking for a church, and could not, because there were no churches that I could find. Churches of color, that is, in the Gaithersburg area. And so there were lots of Sundays when I just didn't want to drive in and I didn't go to church, and that didn't sit well with me. So a friend of mine, a coworker, said to me, she says, Wanda, they're creating a new AME church there in Gaithersburg. And I said, really? She says, yes, they're going to be meeting in a school. Well, I immediately said, well, I don't want to go. I'm not meeting in a school. So I was not going to do that. But one Sunday morning, I was married at the time, and my husband was away on business. And I said to him, I'm going to go to church on Sunday. And he says, where are you going to go? I says, oh, I don't know. So when I woke up that Sunday, I said, well, you know what? I'm going to try to find this AME church. And if I have to stop at every school I come to until I find it, I will do that. Well, God was with me, because the very first the school I stopped at was the school that they were going to have the church in. And that was AME Gaithersburg. And so I walked through the doors of the choral room, and I fell in love with the church, the members, that is. And I joined the church. That was probably in March of that year. And I joined the church in August. And I want to say that was 1984. If I'm not mistaken. But I remember going home telling my husband when he returned, I said, oh, I found this great church and we have to go to it. And he says, oh, where is it? And I said, it's in a school. And he says, well, I'm not sure about that. But nevertheless, we both went and we joined the church. And so immediately became active in the church. The pastor at the time was Dr. Lois Ann Poe Gray. And she said to me the day that I joined, she said, so what do you want to do in the church? And I turned and I pointed to this young lady by the name of Sister Purvey Brody. She was an usher. And I said, I want to do what she does, because she greeted me that day I walked in that church, and she made me feel comfortable every Sunday that I walked in. And so I joined the usher board, and she says, well, we also want you to be, when I got home that night, Reverend Poe Gray called me. She says, will you serve as our superintendent of Sunday school? And I remember saying to myself, I don't even know if I can spell superintendent, let alone service. And needless to say, I said yes, because, John, when you say to God, if you can use anything, use me, and God comes back and says, okay, this is what I want you to do, well, you got to do it. So I served as superintendent of, at the time, we called it Sunday school. It wasn't church school. It was Sunday school. We met on Sundays. And so I did that for about 10 years or so. And I went on to also be trustee pro tem, serving the Missionary Society, of course, the lay organization, stewardship and finance, you name it. I did some of all of that in the church. But the church was new. It was young. We eventually built our own structure. We moved out of that choral room into the place where the church is located today. And so I was there from 1984, I think it is, until I left in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I got started. Now, I was born and raised in the Baptist church, and I went to Catholic school for a while. But, my parents told me, you find a church where they believe what you believe. And of course, I believe in Jesus Christ, my Savior. And so it wasn't hard for me to make the switch from a Baptist to an AME church, because the AME church opened their arms, and I enjoyed every bit of it. So, John, that's how I got to become an AME. And I will say that I am now a lifelong AME.
It was interesting. Dr. Poe Gray, she's from Nashville.
And so
my sister and Dr. Poe Gray went to high school together.
Mm-hmm.
And I always get the running joke when people run into me. So like, wait a minute, how can you be? I'm like, yes, because my father was born when my father was later on in life, but that's a story another time. So I thank you for calling Dr. Poe Gray's name and the great work that she did to help build First AME Gaithersburg.
Yeah, and John, my sisters went to school with her also.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm from Nashville. And they went to Tennessee State. One of them taught at Pearl Cone. They went to Cameron High School, and then they graduated and went on to TSU. And so Dr. Poe's father, you remember, he was in the drama department. And so, and Dr. Jamie Coleman and all of them. So my sisters knew all of them. Now I'm much younger than they are, and I didn't.
you better discover. I'm much younger than that. Yeah. Because
I'm like you, okay?
Yeah, but it is indeed a small world. What are the odds that you would end up at a church started by someone from
God had ordained that.
Yeah. So I want to switch tack for a second. You mentioned your work with the Federal Communications Commission. I mean, you were a career government servant, and you no longer live in the DC metro area. You've relocated to Florida. That's apparently where all the snowbirds go to. So tell us about your work with the federal government.
So when I graduated from Spelman, I went to work for the Federal Communications Commission. And another small world. At the time I was married, and my husband's name, Ricardo Pickens, he was a graduate of Morehouse College, and the Morehouse Alumni Association and the Spelman Alumni Association greeted us with open arms. And the Morehouse man, his name was James Davis, and he said to my husband at the time, I hear your wife needs a job. What is she, what does she want to do? So my background, I was a mathematics major. And so he offered me a job working for the government and as a statistician. So when I first started, I was a statistician, then I became a mathematical statistician. And eventually I went on to become a computer programmer. And I enjoyed working for the FCC, worked there for the entire 36 years of my career. Started out doing the statistics and research, and eventually moving in again into computer science, where I became a computer programmer. And then eventually they moved me into management. And as my management skills increased, my technical skills decreased, of course. And I went on to become actually the deputy CIO, where I spent a fair number of years doing that. And then eventually on to the associate managing director for administrative operations. But I enjoyed working for the FCC. And a lot of people would say, why don't you leave and go to a larger agency? And I thought, well, why? And so a lot of those same people that said that to me, they left and they came back. and John, I had a lot of friends that say, well, why don't you go work for the private sector? And I said, well, why? And of course, those that work for the private sector, over the years with layoffs and, company buyouts and so forth, would come to me and say, wow, we should have went to work for the government because you probably know we have a really great retirement system. And the federal government, John, allowed me to make a living. And that's what I was most, concerned with. Not so much a life, because I did work hard, but certainly it allowed me to make a living. And I enjoyed every bit of it, though.
You know, it's interesting. I'm seeing a theme here. You know, you're interested in numbers. You're interested in, like, you know, left, right. You know, what's black, what's white. You know, sticking a theme. So that leads me to my next question. So, how did you become interested in delving into parliamentary procedure? Because you didn't get this through the YPD. Because, you know, I mean, and you're part of, are you part of a sorority?
Yep.
So you're AKA. So I mean, you probably got a little bit of it in the sorority meetings. But how did you like delve into the study of parliamentary procedure?
So John, you're right on it. I like structure, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that's why I like the AME Church. There's structure there. Some people say I'm a little rigid, but I believe in following the rules. And just tell me what the rules are and let me understand the rules, and I will follow the rules. And I have to tell you, I expect others to follow the rules too.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was growing up, you know, if mom said something, that was the rule, and that's what we followed. You didn't deviate from that. Certainly, we know things happen, but if you had to deviate from a rule, you had to get permission to deviate from that rule. So, nevertheless, I was in sorority meeting one day. It was a Sunday afternoon, and one of the sorors asked a question, and the parliamentarian stood up and said, "'Cause I said so." And I thought, ooh, that can't be right. That's not right. And that stayed with me. So that was Sunday afternoon. And then Monday, I went to an official board meeting, and I had just stepped down as being trustee pro tem. I had been pro tem for about 10 years, and I just stepped down to spend more time with my mom, who was coming to visit more often, and she was aging. So I go to the official board meeting, and I'm no longer part of the official board. So I sat in the back of the church where I could just observe. And I noticed during the meeting, when they got to the trustee report, there were lots of questions about the trustee work, and they didn't know the answers. So, a lot of them that was there. And so I raised my hand to say, oh, I know, because, last week I was trustee pro tem. So of course I know. And so the pastor recognized me. As soon as I stood up, someone yelled out, "You're out of order." And I turned around. I was like, what? and again, I said to myself, you know what? I paid dues to belong to the sorority. I pay my tithes and offerings, go to church. And this is how people treat you. So I left the meeting really upset, more with myself than anything else, because I didn't know the rules. I didn't know how to do this. What do you mean I'm out of order? Well, what are the rules? I did it the right way. I was seeking recognition. I was recognized. I stood up. So what is going on here? So I went home that evening, and I vowed that day that would never happen to me again, that I would go off and I would find out the rules. I would find out what my rights are, and others, because I just don't like how people are being treated. This can't be right. And it didn't feel good. There was nothing orderly about this. There was no God in this, And so I found Piola Mcco. And she told me, I said, well, will you come to our church and teach a class? She says, no, you come to my class. I'm going to teach you, and then you can go teach them. Well, I really didn't want to do that, John. I just wanted to learn. That's all I wanted. I don't want to teach anybody anything, but I want to learn. Make a long story short, I did take her class, and she convinced me to take the membership exam for the National Association of Parliamentarians, which I was adamant, I'm not doing that, because I'm not joining another organization with church and National Council of Negro Women and sorority and all and I just don't have time. But she convinced me to take the exam, and I did, and I got a perfect score. And I thought,
of course you did.
So I thought, wow, okay. And she says, now I want you to join my unit. I says, well, I don't want to do that either. I'm busy. But of course I did. And I want you to run for office. Well, I don't want to do that either. And it just kept on and on and on. So that's how I got involved in parliamentary procedure. And John, I just have to be the first one to tell you, once you learn and once you see this, you say to yourself, we're doing it all wrong. And that's every organization. I just have to tell you that. And that was amazing to me. I remember going to my first late biennial convention in DC and wanted to walk out. It was that bad.
That was 2007, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
See, that we and for those of y'all who are watching, let's just say 2007, for a number of reasons, I almost walked out of that. Well, they almost threw me out of that convention, but that's a whole other discussion for another time. We were there, you remember. But in all seriousness, though, you mentioned Piola Mcco.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, tell our people who are listening, who was Piola Mcco?
So here's what I tell people about Piola Mcco. In addition to her being my mentor, Piola Mcco also was the parliamentarian for the Women's Missionary Society.
Mm-hmm.
But before all of that, Piola Mcco was the 11th Supreme Bacillus of Chi Phi Nursing Sorority. Mm-hmm. She was also the parliamentarian to Dorothy Height. She became Dorothy Height's parliamentarian in the 70s, and she was her parliamentarian until Dr. Height passed. But she continues to be the parliamentarian for the National Council of Negro Women. And she was she was renowned for her parliamentary procedure. And I remember her telling me that when she first became a parliamentarian or was interested, she couldn't join the National Association of Parliamentarians because of her skin color. And so she had to join the American Institute of Parliamentarians, which I'm also a member of that as well and credentialed through them. But Piola was well respected, and people constantly called her for advice and guidance. So, it was nothing but God that led me to her, and she took me under her wings to teach me. And she said to me, she says, "You don't become a parliamentarian overnight. It takes years and years." She says, "Just because you have your credentials now, and it's just not about membership. I had to take several exams and pass them, and demonstrations. I actually had to fly to Omaha, Nebraska, to actually stand on the floor and demonstrate that I could serve as a parliamentarian and as a presiding officer." And she said to me, she said, "Just because you have those credentials does not make you a seasoned parliamentarian. It will take years." And she was right. It does take years of study, and you have to want to do it, though, John. I can tell you that it's not something that you just pick up on the side. You have to want to do it. And because it does involve structure, and there is quite a bit of analysis that goes on. And so I think that just sort of married very well with my background in mathematics.
Well, and I wanted you to mention Ms. Mcco because I remember many moons ago when I joined the NAP. Someone told me, they were like, if you want to join, I think it was a preacher who told me this, if you want to learn about parliamentary procedure, you need to join the National Association of Parliamentarians. So many, many, many years ago, I joined, and I noticed that Piola Mcco, like, she was a name throughout the NAP. And she was like revered in that organization to the point where like I think her trainings were legendary. And I did not make the connection that this woman that I heard so much about was an AME until very, very much later. I think I was reading your biography, but I was like, Piola Mcco, yeah, she's the, I was like, she was AME? It just clicked. I mean, how we have the diversity of people in our pews that do so many wonderful things in the world that we may never realize are sitting in our pews, such as yourself.
Yeah. She was very well known, and at the national level, she received numerous awards consistently. We have our year. We look at our we have bienniums. And throughout the bienniums, Piola was constantly recognized for her teaching parliamentary procedure. We have a unit in DC that's named after her, the Mcco unit. She created a youth division within the Mcco unit. We have a scholarship, of course, named after her, but she was very well known. Her and another lady by the name of Betty Tunstall, those were my mentors. But Piola would call me every day and ask me a question or tell me what I should be doing. And so, and she told me, she says, someday I want you to be the parliamentarian for NCNW. I want you to be the parliamentarian for the Women's Missionary Society. I want you to run for office. I want you to do all these things. And I just kept thinking, how am I going to break her heart? Because I'm not doing that. Well,
and lo and behold, you just finished your tenure as the NAP president.
Yeah, and she lived long enough to see me become president. Let me just tell you this, John, that I was with her the day on her birthday, the day before she passed, and I flew in. Forgot where I was at, but I flew right on into DC so I could be at her bedside with her. And I told her, I said, I'm here, and she looked at me and she smiled. And when I would talk to her, she would smile. You could tell she knew what I was saying. And when I got ready to leave, her eyes followed me out of the room, and she could see her crying. And I said, I'll be back. And she just smiled at me, and I walked out, and then within 12 hours she was gone. But I was blessed to have been there with her when she passed. Well, the day before she passed. Mm-hmm.
Well, we're going to hit a commercial break, and we'll continue our interview.
Right. Okay.
Pain has a personal touch that they add to the theological education. It's not that we just get you there and educate you and send you on your way.
It has really developed me in my expanding of my mind, my thinking process, my thought process. It really helped me to grow and how I debate, how I view things.
Tearing up about it now because it was a journey. It was very hard. But having those professors and those mentors and that family experience believing you, to journey with you and to know that they believe in you, I don't think you can get that somewhere else.
And we're back. We had a slight throwback to our initial opening that we don't use anymore. But we're here talking with Wanda Sims, the immediate past president of the National Association of Parliamentarians, as well as parliamentarian for the Women's Missionary Society and the lay organization, talking about parliamentary procedure. You were mentioning briefly about the different certifications you have. And for people who are watching this, walk us through how the different levels of NAP, for example, you are Wanda Sims PRP, which is Professional Registered Parliamentarian. Can you walk us through the different levels? For example, Parliamentarian, Registered Parliamentarian, Professional Parliamentarian, Registered Parliamentarian for the National Association of Parliamentarians. I know the AIP has a different level. You have Certified Parliamentarian and then CPT, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Okay. So when you first join NAP, you're just a regular member. You have no credentials, and we do not allow you to actually go out and serve clients for money. You can teach and do things of that nature, but you can't charge money. The first level of certification we have is your registered parliamentarian. And it has changed over time. It used to be a set of 1,200 questions that you would study. And then the exam was in 5 parts, and you'd have to, in the beginning, you'd have to pass all 5 parts at one time. And then they allowed us to, I think sometime after I had become an RP, they allowed you to take them in parts or something like that. And so once you become an RP, what it basically says is that you can actually have clients and you can charge money and you can take care of those ordinary or basic things that will happen in an ordinary meeting, a monthly meeting or something like that. But if you were going to serve as a convention parliamentarian, then we have another set of credentials, and that's the professional registered parliamentarian. And that what you have to do is you have to be a registered parliamentarian at least a year before you can sit to become a professional registered parliamentarian. And so in order to become a professional registered parliamentarian, I had to write an opinion, answer some research questions, teach a class, passed some ethics questions. As I mentioned, I flew to Omaha for my demonstrations, and I had to both serve as a parliamentarian and as a presiding officer. And there were a number of things that we had to do. And this was a 3-day process when I was in Omaha. And so once you become a professional registered parliamentarian, then you can, market yourself. And we have a database online where we put all of the professional registered parliamentarians there. And if you can go to the website and search and find a parliamentarian. And some of us specialize in, bylaws. We specialize in writing opinions, or we specialize in training, or just a whole number of things. But if you are a professional registered parliamentarian, you can do all of that. And we do have to keep our what I call our skills alive. Mm-hmm. We have to keep our credentials current. And so up until a couple I guess about a month or maybe 2 months ago, every 6 years, I would have to renew my certification to be a PRP. But just recently, during the biennium, our Commission on Credentialing took over. And so now we have to get a certain number of CEUs every 2 years to maintain our credentials. And so that's the National Association of Parliamentarians, and we are the largest organization. And then there is AIP, the American Institute of Parliamentarians, and I actually hold their credential too. They have what we call a certified parliamentarian and a certified professional parliamentarian. And so the lowest level they have is CP. That's the one I hold. And then the next would be the certified professional parliamentarian. And you mentioned the T. So once you become a CP or a CPP, you can then also obtain the T course. We attend their T course and get the T added to that. So you can become CPT, and it just means you're a certified trainer. And I do anticipate doing that sometime next year. And then maybe the year after that's, standing for the CPP. I'm thinking about it. I don't know.
You're thinking about it.
Yeah. And the difference between AIP and NAP is AIP, they use standard code, American Institute of Parliamentarians standard code. We call it AIPSC, and it's based on the work of Alice Sturgis. They also use Robert's Rules of Order. And some years ago, they had Demeter, Riddick, Cannon, and a bunch of others also that you had to study. And I enjoy reading all of those and studying those. And it does just help you to be a better parliamentarian if you know more than one parliamentary authority. So that's how we're structured in NAP. You have to take an exam to become a member, whereas AIP, you don't. You can just join AIP.
And I think for the people listening, understand that while Robert's Rules of Order is the parliamentary authority that we use in the AME Church, there are others. You mentioned Sturgis and Cannon, for example. The Congress uses, I think they have their own rules procedure, but Sturgis and Demeter's are modeled after how Congress operates. So there's tons there, and we're not even talking about British procedure. That's a whole other.
The Congress uses, so the House and the Senate have their own rules, and they're largely based off of Jefferson's manual. So Thomas Jefferson also, has written a lot about parliamentary procedure, and so they use that, and then they just make them up, John. They just make them up, and change them. Just make them up and change them. Whereas,
sounds like an AME meeting, but that's we gonna get to that in a second.
That's where they go. But yes, they do use a little bit of some of the others, but mostly it is Jefferson. They do use Roberts as well. Yes.
So you mentioned how the NAP was, unlike the AIP, was formally segregated. So let's talk about, you told us a bit about what led you to pursue leadership, but let's hold on this. How did Wanda Sims go from saying that ain't right and learning to Piola Mcco saying you're going to be president, you're going to run for office, you're saying I don't know, to having that immediate past president's pen that you have right now? Walk us through that process. Why did you decide, and how did you decide to pursue leadership there?
And I didn't. Let me just tell you that I didn't decide it. God decided that. John. And I'm that's just the honest goodness truth. I am not the person that woke up and said, you know what, I'm going to become a officer or a leader in NAP. That just was not me. And no one believes me when I say that, but it's just not me. So I was serving in the McCaskill unit. I think they asked me to be the historian or something. And then, of course, Miss Piola said, you should run for office. And I said, well, I don't want to be an officer. And she convinced me to run for, at the time, I ran for vice president and I ran for, I think I ran for vice president and I won. And I was still in my first term as vice president, and we needed to elect a president. And so she says, I want you to run for president. I said, I haven't even finished being vice president. Well, John, we had the election and I won both positions, president and vice president. So you have to choose which one you're going to do. So I said, okay, I'll be the president. And so it was a very exciting time. We were doing lots of things, and someone said, you should, I think it was Darlene Allen, who is the first African-American female to be president of NAP. She lives in the District of Columbia. And she says, I want you to run for treasurer of the state association. I said, treasurer? I said, I don't know anything about counting money. I can count my own money, but I can't count anybody else. And, I can count the church's money, though, because, stewardship and finance and trustee pro tem, I can count that money. And so they convinced me to run for treasurer. And, of course, I won. And I enjoyed that. I did that for a term or two. And then someone said, we have a national election coming up. And I was like, yeah, I heard about that. They said, we think you should run for treasurer at the national level. I was like, you have lost your mind. I am not doing that. And so I think someone got to Piola and said, Piola, if you ask her, she'll do it. Well, Piola did ask me. And I told her, I said, Miss Piola, now, I'm not doing that. That's a bit much. I have a job. I have, I'm busy with the church. I have all these other things I want to do. And she says, well, I think you should do it. And so I remember somebody saying, well, she's not going to win. And Piola was really upset when they said that she's not going to win. And of course, John, I did win. And I went on to serve 2 terms as treasurer at the national level. And so I firmly believe that sometimes you have to take one for the team. And so that was my way of saying, okay, I'm going to become treasurer and I'm going to take one for the team. And when I became treasurer, I saw a lot of work that needed to be done with the finances of that organization. And so having the background in the federal government, having to manage a $60 million budget of my own, I could manage money. I knew the right questions, although I was always surrounded with accountants and auditors and all of that. But just my analytical background, I could answer the right questions and get to the right answers. And so it wasn't hard for me to be the treasurer of NAP, but I had to make some drastic changes. And the leadership was not happy at first, and the membership. But I told them this is how it has to be. I come from the federal government, and we take care of money now. We're not going to waste any money. So anyway, I was very successful at being treasurer. And someone said, well, now that you've served 2 years on the 2 terms at the national level, you are eligible to run for vice president or president. I thought, no, I took one for the team. I'm not doing that. And of course, they got to Miss Piola and she says, well, just do it, Wanda. And I said, to what end? Where is this going? And she says, I want you to do it. And I thought, okay, well, I was running against 2 other people, as you heard me say, and they didn't look like me. And a past president of NAP came up to me and he said, you don't have to run for vice president. He says, we have 3 good candidates, but you could wait. It's somebody else's turn, not yours. And I looked at him and I said, I'm not interested in running for those other positions. I'm running for vice president. It's what I'm running for. So I think I was mad at that point, John.
Oh, yeah. They said the wrong thing.
Yeah,
wow.
They really did. And this was the 2 nights before the election. So we have the election that Thursday. And of course, a majority has to elect. And we go up and very different than the AME church. We have to draw straws to determine who's gonna the order in which your name is gonna appear on the ballot and the order in which we're gonna give our campaign speeches. And so, of course, I drew the last straw. I was gonna speak last, but that was okay with me. I didn't care. And so the other two, they got up and they had these pieces of papers, all this stuff, and they were reading and reading and reading and reading. And I looked at that and I thought, So I took my piece of paper, John, and I said, let me just fold this in half right now. Just read the top part of this. And so when I told them what I had done as treasurer, how I had been a good steward of their money and had grown their money into what it was. I think it was over at that point. So anyway, we had the election, and at the results, I was 2 votes shy of being elected. And I thought, okay, but I have more than they do, but we need a majority, so we had to reballot. So I won the vice presidency, and so there was some expectation that if you run for vice president, that certainly you would run for president. And again, I said, now see, I didn't say that. I said I would run for vice president. Well, I had already had a conversation with God and said, now, God, if this is what you'd have me to do, I'm going to do it. And I kind of left it there. So I had a really, really good term as vice president. The pandemic hit and so forth. And so there were a lot we had to do. But at the time, we had just elected our first African-American female president, Darlene Allen. So I was her vice president. So to have both African-American female president and vice president standing there together was a first for us. We had males, but they were not vice president and president at the same time. So that was very powerful. And so I was inspired by the work that we did during that biennium when I was vice president. And I said to God, okay, if you intend for me to be president, you're going to have to tell me what it is you want me to do. And I'm going to do it. And so as history has it, I did go on to run for president, and I was elected president. And that's my story, John.
Well, before we hit break, I'm just curious, because this is like an association of parliamentarians. So this is an association of people who are supposed to know all the rules. So what is an NAP convention like? I mean, this is an association of parliamentarians, so I'm assuming that everybody knows what they do. I mean, what's an NAP convention like?
Let me tell you something. When you have the authors that wrote the book there as members, because they are members of NAP, I just have to tell you, it is like nothing you've ever seen before in your life, and you've never experienced this. Every rule in that book, they're going to use. They, where most people just adopt their standing rules, nobody objects to them, they adopt them. It could take us 3 or 4 hours to adopt our standing rules. I just want you to know that, because I'm telling you that right now. They're going to amend them, they're going to debate them, and it's just going to be crazy. And then there's the other thing is, when we go to convention, we're there for 2 things. We're there to elect officers and to amend the bylaws if there are any amendments. And with us, there's always some amendments. And so when you have that many parliamentarians sitting there staring at you, and like I was doing, it was like this unnerving it is. But the good thing about it is, I have a parliamentarian too. As president, I had a parliamentarian, a very good parliamentarian at that. His name is Timothy Wynn. He lives here in Florida. And so, the same thing I do for my clients, Tim did for me. He wrote my scripts for me. He advised me, and when you're standing there presiding, and for me, I wasn't standing there thinking about all this parliamentary procedure, because I'm thinking about, I'm the traffic cop here in this room and on this convention floor, making sure that everybody's rights are, no one's rights are abused, or, making sure it's fair and everybody has equal opportunity to speak within the rules and so forth. And so you really do need a parliamentarian beside you to kind of keep you on track, or to keep in front of you what's going on, because you have motions, you have amendments to those amendments. And let me just share with you, while I was standing on the convention floor, John, I made a ruling, and I ruled that something was not in order. And so the convention overturned my decision. We debated it, and they told me I was wrong. I said, okay, I'm wrong. And then on the very next item that we were working on, I said, see, this is why I said that. They were like, oh, we get it now. I was like, yeah, this is what I was saying, why that was out of order. Well, we didn't understand. Well, whatever. Okay. All right. So it's not something that I ever want to do again. I mean, just yeah.
Well, you got your past president pins. You can sit
Yes,
down
and
just enjoy, the past.
I never have to pay dues again, and I'll always have a seat at the table.
Well, you paid enough of your dues,
Yeah.
but and before we go to break, you said something that's important, and I hope that those people are listening. You, as someone who has studied the book, taken tests on the book, is paid to consult on parliamentary procedure and run meetings. When you were in that presiding officer role, it's different looking in that role than when you're the consultant. And I think it's important to understand the humility in that, and also understanding that leaders aren't supposed to do everything. And even leaders who know the book, there's a reason why you're supposed to have someone to help you out, even if you know the book.
That's right, John. You have to have people around you, because, as much as I love parliamentary procedure, my role as president is not predicated on how well I stand there and preside over a meeting. It was about me moving the organization to a different level, carrying out the business of the organization. And that's what I was focused on, all of the achievements. And we did a lot during the biennium. And that's where my focus was. It was not me standing on that stage, making sure I dotted every I and crossed every T. I didn't get it right. I'm going to tell you that right now. But I had a parliamentarian that, I was sitting there. And so someone would make a motion, and I know how to process these motions, with the best of them. But he was there to put something in front of me, or the technology was there for me to see it, for me to know that the next person I'm calling is at microphone 2, or the next person I'm calling, there's a point of order which takes precedent. Call this one. All this technology was around me to help me to make sure it was seamless. So you didn't know and it's not that I don't know it. It's just that I've got a lot going on. What's next? And there was someone there to put it in front of me, or to say, okay, we're here now, or do this or whatever. And I go, okay, this is where we are. And I go, oh, okay, got it. And so standing on the convention floor for 3 days is with a bunch of parliamentarians is more than a notion.
You just said something, and I hope that the people here, including some of our beloved fathers and mothers of the church, are hearing this. We're going to hit our next commercial break.
Okay. All right.
And so part of what I am inviting people to do as we go in this campaign, I invite them to become a part of the Cooper experience, because you want to know that the person that would be a bishop has sufficient experience and understanding and knowledge of the denomination and its workings and its ways, that they can serve well, serve the people well, serve the denomination well, as a bishop in the church. And so I'm asking people to become a part of the Cooper experience, because I believe it is the kind of experience you can trust. You can trust me to do well, be well, and administer well as one of the bishops of the church. And so I ask you to become a part of the Cooper experience, because it is the experience you can trust.
So we're back with Ms. Wanda Sims, the immediate past president of the National Association of Parliamentarians, as well as the elected parliamentarian for the Women's Missionary Society and the parliamentarian for the Connectional organization. So this has been the elephant in the room, and now we're going to hit this question. I've been needing to ask the whole time. So we know that AMEs talk a lot about parliamentary procedure, but it's clear that we sometimes don't understand what we are doing. So what are some common errors you've seen happen at meetings for those of us here who sleep with Robert and the Bible and the discipline under their pillow, but it's clear that something got missed in between? Help us out, Ms. Sims.
All right.
Make it plain.
Okay, now first, let me just say this. I think some of them know exactly what they're doing, and it's their intent. It is their intent to do it the way they're doing it. You know, and it's wrong. Let me just tell you this now, it's wrong. But the thing that I see the most, and let me tell you what bothers me. Our children are watching us, John, and they do exactly what they see us do. They really do. And then I see them and I'm going, they got it from us. And we think we're doing it right. And so I see them do it incorrectly. And I judge a lot of competitions. Actually, I will be in Indianapolis in the first part of November judging the Future Farmers of America, their national competition.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, but the things we get wrong, let me just rattle some of them off. You know, the first one and the biggest one is so moved. I have no idea what so moved means. But you hear it all the time. The presiding officer, the pastor, whoever will say, well, this is what I think we should do or whatever. And somebody will say so moved and somebody will say second. Well, that's not how it's done. That is the biggest abuse of the chair's power, I think. And let me just tell you, the presiding officer has no more power than the members give them. And so we give away a lot of our power because we don't know or we're afraid to say something. So moved is not a motion. Say clearly what the motion is, what action it is you want us to take. The other thing is when we're having elections, it's a farce. I'm gonna tell you that right now. It's a farce. They come in with a slate and they hold it up, and you know, any objection, so moved, and it's elected. You know, bylaws say we're supposed to have a ballot. Now, in a lot of cases, it does say if it's uncontested, it can be by a voice vote, but you still have to do that, and you have to allow people to self-nominate or to nominate other people. And a lot of times you don't see that happen. They just come in and this is how it's going to be. Now, not all of them do that, but I've seen that. The other thing that I see us do a lot, and that is we don't believe that the minutes are as important as they are. The minutes are the official record of the organization, and a lot of times we don't have minutes or they're done so poorly. It's a lot of he said, she said, and not really the actions that need to be in there, because that's what we really want to know. It's the historical documentation of the actions that the organization has taken. And some of them say, well, we'll adopt the minutes next month, or we'll adopt them at the end of this month, or we don't have the minutes and just never get them. Another problem is the bylaws may say, or in our case, discipline or whatever you're looking at, that the pastor is going to appoint blah, 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 or the president is going to appoint committees, but they stop reading right there. It says the president will appoint with the approval of. So the president can say, here are the people I want to appoint, but the exec board or whatever board of directors or somebody has to approve that. And if you don't get their approval, they're not appointed. So I see a lot of that where we read and interpret the discipline, and I'm thinking, well, that's not quite what it said, or you missed the part. Or a lot of times people will say, well, the bylaws don't say we can't do it. Well, omission does not equal permission. Okay. Because it's not in the bylaws doesn't mean you're permitted to do that. It's not there, so therefore you can't do it. A lot of times we don't realize that if our governing documents, the discipline or the bylaws or whatever, are silent, then you go to the parliamentary authority to get the ruling, or follow that procedure. And they'll read one passage in R.O.R. and think, oh, there it is. And I'm going, but you forgot that big exception sitting there. And there's an exception to everything. So I see a lot of that. And I think a lot of our members, our leadership, and I know I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but our leadership, they think that the discipline is a guide. The discipline is not a guide. That's what it says we're supposed to do. And people will tell me, well, and they hit me over the head with the Bible. And Miss Piola told me this. She says, Wanda, this is what you tell our good AMEs. if the Bible tells you that this is how you're to elect the members, then you follow the Bible. But if the Bible is silent on it, then we're going to the parliamentary authority or the bylaws is what we're going to do. And so I have to always tell them that if the Bible says this is how you do it, then you do it. But if the Bible is silent, then we're going to do what Roberts tells us to do. For instance, and I know I'm going to get in trouble for this too. The discipline is very clear on the number of trustees and stewards we can have, and not to exceed 19. Well, why in the world some would have 26 and 27? And when they're not really elected, and you walk in, and what happens is the pastor says, well, here are the 26 I want. Is any objection to this? And then they're elected. And he'll say, all those in favor, raise your hand or say aye, whatever. That's not an election. That's not how that's to be done. And so it's those types of things. I really am concerned when I see the stewards and the trustees of the church don't do what the discipline says they're supposed to do. I don't know why it is that the pastor develops the budget, presents the budget, you're in a budget meeting, and it's the pastor that's answering all the questions. The stewards and the trustees are asking questions about it. I'm like, well, didn't you prepare it? Where's the Stewardship and Finance Commission? Even if your church is small, you got to have those protocols in place. And so, John, we just
and what you just said, I mean, because we're gonna go on and go that this is a safe space. The recorder, is a safe space, and they're gonna shoot me. They ain't gonna shoot you. But
no, they're gonna shoot me. They're gonna shoot me too.
They're going to wound. They will kill me, but they'll just wound you. They're gonna take. But as you said, if children watch from adults what they do, we have to understand that our leadership our pastors are looking at what they see their presiding elder and their bishop do.
That's right.
Call a thing a thing. The same way that I've seen lay leaders follow poor examples from other poor leaders and poor pastors. Yes. I've sat at meetings with a whole bunch of preachers sitting looking at a budget. It's like, so ain't nobody gonna say nothing? And are we gonna talk about the fact that there's no committee and what happened? But I've seen people run roughshod over rules, and then they take what they see at this level and bring it on down. So, and I wrote this in the editorial about, the situation that we're dealing with in the church right now regarding the retirement funds, and saying, we only have our culture to blame. And Reverend J. Edgar Boyd, who's retiring, wrote about the culture being canceled, the fact that our culture has allowed some of these abuses to take place because we see something and then we turn right around and do the same thing. And what grieves me is that you'll see lay people say something about something, like, the preachers, but then in our organization or in the Missionary Society, we will turn around and do the exact same thing.
That's right, John. We do, and you see it happen. We will go to general conference or annual conference or whatever, Episcopal conferences, your district conferences, and people will complain, but go home to their local church and it's the exact same thing. Don't say a word about it. And I'm thinking, how does that work? And let me just give you an example. Sometimes, I'm in an organization where I'm a member and I know something is not right and I don't like it. And I'm thinking, nobody's saying a word. I may say something and I may vote with them, but what they don't realize, there's a reason why I'm voting with them, because I know they're going to win. And if I want to
reconsider, you have to, the motion to reconsider, you have to vote
on the prevailing side, or sometimes I'll second something and they'll go, oh, she's with them. I'm going, no, I think we should discuss it because I'm against it. Yeah. That's exactly why I'm doing it. And so we have to be strategic about what we're doing. And let me tell you, parliamentary procedure is not to be used as a weapon. And I tell people that all the time. And a lot of times I don't say anything because, John, I know I could wreak havoc if I wanted to, but that's not my goal and my intent. So I won't say something sometimes. And I'm thinking, because I know I'm not going to win that battle, but to the extent that I can teach And, you know, you take it or leave it. I'm going to tell you, like one bishop said to me, he says, you mean to tell me I'm doing that wrong? I'm wrong. I said, well, let me just tell you this. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, but here's the right way to do it. Here's the right way. Now you decide how you want to, but don't go off and tell somebody I said you were wrong or whatever, but here's the right way. And so I think that, you know, as lay people, we have a responsibility to stand up and be heard. And yeah, some of us are going to have to take a hit for the team, but we need to stand up and be heard. And, you know, we elect delegates, and we know how that goes. They tell the delegates how to vote.
Yeah. And we're in election season right now across the church. So, you know, and I'm hoping that when people see this, they will understand, you know, Robert's Rules of Order exist to provide majority rule with minority protections.
That's
and
right.
We have all that we need between the discipline, Robert's Rules of Order, and the Bible to know what we need to do.
Yeah.
But the question is, as you know, I've heard several people say, you can't legislate courage. You can put anything you want in discipline, but you can't put. But if you don't have the courage to ask it to be enforced,
that's right. Yeah. And some of us are going to have to just stand up and take one for the team, and you know, hopefully we will begin to see a difference. In, you know, people will start to listen. And John, let me just share this too. People have to understand, I cannot teach you parliamentary procedure in an hour or two. This doesn't happen. You know, people invite me to come and do the basics. And I say, well, how much time do I have? You got 45 minutes. You got an hour. You got 90 minutes. And I'm going, oh, okay. Then they're not serious. But then let me share with you, Payne Seminary has asked me to do a 8-week certificate program for them. And it was scheduled to start October 31st. And we're going to do 8 Tuesdays in a row, I think it is. And then at the end of that.
So you're going to have the students do tell them as part of this course, you need to take the NAP certificate?
No. Yeah, I'm going to tell them, look, if you want to learn about parliamentary procedure, we're going to do this for 8 weeks. What you do with it, because every person doesn't want to be a member of NAP. I got that. But they want to learn more about parliamentary procedure. So we do still have the Wisconsin course that is offered through the University of Wisconsin, and one of our members teaches that, and then we get paid for that. In other words, but let me just share with you. As president of NAP during the biennium, I created NAP University. So we now have our own university where we teach parliamentary procedure. And so we launched NAP University on April 1st, and it became a reality. And I'm very, very proud of that. But it needs care and feeding, because, you know, we launched it, but it has to evolve. And so our next step is to appoint a provost and department heads and so forth, so that we can, you know, it can continue to move forward and grow. But what I tell people all the time, if you want to be an NAP member, you know, it's a wonderful thing. You can join a unit in your area. They're local units. If there's not a unit there, then we can create a unit. It takes 5 members to create a unit. And so, you know, there you have meetings, and during your meetings, you actually practice all the things that I will be teaching you. You actually get to practice those things. And so we do a lot of outreach too, because we know everybody doesn't want to be an NAP member. And the good thing about NAP University is all of these are online courses, and you can take them at 2:00 in the morning in your pajamas if you like. And then we have the fundamentals class. Once you finish that, if you want to take the NAP membership exam, you are prepared to do that, and you can take it and become a member. So I'm excited about the university. That was one of the signature things I wanted to get done during the biennium. And I never referred to the biennium as the Sims administration, because it was a board of directors and all our members that came together to make these things happen. So I refer to it as the 2021-2023 biennium. Those were, you know, we accomplished a lot. We renovated our headquarters. We redesigned. We had a totally new website. We have NAP University. We have a new credentialing program. We have a new members orientation program. We have a new education exchange program. We did a lot during our biennium that we're just really grateful for. To get that much done in 2 years was amazing.
Wow. And on the heels of the pandemic.
Yes.
Well, Ms. Sims, that was actually the last question I was going to ask you about
Oh,
your NAP presence. So we are at our hour,
okay.
and I just want to thank you for sharing. This has been a rich conversation. I have truly, well, you could, I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, we have an NAP president. I'm so excited. I mean, thinking back to the times when I did the exam. I took the NAP exam, I think when I was like a sophomore in high school. But anyway,
Okay.
yeah, I passed it too. But anyway,
We'd love to have you come back.
I might pay my money and come back. I don't know. I got to retake that exam. But anyway,
Okay.
I am thankful for you being here and for you sharing with us and your willingness to share with us. And several people have already said, you know, I want to reach out to Ms. Sims, and I know I've sent your email to at least 2 or 3 people, and I'm glad Payne is using you. But I'm understanding that we have a wealth of knowledge to do the right thing right within our church. We don't have to look outside. We have someone in our church who has been at the pinnacle of this process. So, Ms. Sims.
And John, I'm not the only one. Let me just tell you that we have other professional registered parliamentarians in our church. And so they should reach out to them to get them to help. And all of us are willing to help. If you're a member of NAP, you're willing to help. So just let them know that.
And I remember because Miss Virginia Henderson Harris, she was a registered parliamentarian when she served as lay organization. And she's the one who said, we have to make sure that the lay organization parliamentarian is always a registered parliamentarian or a PRP. So I want to honor and remember her because she's the one who put this in motion.
Okay.
But thank you for being here. And we definitely hope that people will take advantage of your resources and the others who are in the nomination. And Ms. Sims, we salute you for a wonderful tenure. And thank you for sharing your time with us.
And thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yes, ma'am. Well, everyone, we're going to wrap up and we will see you all again next time.
Okay. Good night.
Well,